Hi, Broderick.
Hi, Char. How you doing?
I'm so grateful. Thank you for your infinite patience.
It's great. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so grateful. And hello, everyone. I'm so honored and grateful to have Dr. Broderick Rodell here on Real Medicine, the Real Medicine talk today. Um, and Dr. Broderick Rodell is an incredibly warm, sacred person, and I think you probably have the most beautiful website I've ever seen in my life. It's so beautiful. There's that image of you with the heart behind you, and this beautiful curriculum that you've developed that has at the center of it. I mean, the entire premise of it is, how can we love? And it's so beautiful. And so I really see you as this sacred person and also as a thought leader, in addition to, the PhD in chemical engineering and and of course the doctorate in naturopathic medicine and being a doctor. And you're also a capoeira master and teach capoeira.
Not a master.
Oh, well, I think some of your students may beg to differ, but yeah, but it is something that is so sacred. And in some of our other conversations, we've spoken a little bit about the dance and how sacred the dance is, and then a yogi and a mindfulness coach and a teacher and mentor. And so welcome, and it's my holy privilege and honor to have you here on our medicine talks. And so I like to begin with a prayer, Broderick, and I think we talked just for a minute about the word solace, but I like to start with just a little asking the universe, Great Spirit, universe, Tonkashila, creator, angels, ancestors, guardians, all of the Buddhas, all the lineage that we all carry, the ancestors. We welcome you and we ask permission to make this talk. And we're asking for your help at this time. We all need new perspectives, and please guide us with your better perspective, with your clarity, and guide this conversation that it may be a healing conversation for the good of all. We welcome you, great and beautiful mystery, into this and all our conversations. Aho, amen. And so, Broderick, I'm wondering, one of the reasons I've been doing this is that, I think about healing and I think about medicine, and there's old forms of medicine and new forms of medicine. There's ancient technology and new technologies, and you really, you're very much an intersection of all those places, which is, I think, a part of your, what I would consider wisdom, a deeper wisdom. And so I would just be curious, what are your thoughts about real medicine, and what do you feel real medicine is?
That's a good question. Medicine, to me, medicine represents, when I think of medicine, I think of healing. I think of some form of resolution of some type of conflict, within ourselves, between others, between nature and ourselves. And that conflict and what I mean by conflict is there's a lack of continuity or perceived continuity there, a lack of perceived harmony. And medicine, healing, is a means to resolve that and bring about harmony and integration. And so therefore medicine is contextual. It depends on the context and the situation, what medicine is valid, what medicine is conducive for that resolution of a constrict, a conflict, or which can be a constriction of some sort, that is mitigating, that is minimizing flow, harmony. And so whatever is required to facilitate this flow, this harmony, that's the medicine. And it comes in so many different types of, so many different fashions, and it can be applied in different ways. So if it's something related to the psyche, or well, it's something that's predominant by the psyche, because I don't think none of this is really, it's not isolated. But if we look at the whole human being, it's it's the whole mind, body, soul, and planet, and everything else. But when we look at these things in an isolated fashion, if something is if there's a conflict, or there's a lack of integration, or there's an issue of concern that's dominated by the psyche, then you need something, a type of medicine that can be catered towards healing the psyche. And then there's a plethora of traditions and ideas that can facilitate that. Just like, you have an injury in your physical form, your body, just something that's just basic broken bone. Of course, the type of medicine that's required to facilitate that is predominantly something in the emergency room where they're going to set the bone. But there's still a psychological, spiritual component to that.
Oh, absolutely.
Part of that healing, and that's a part of that medicine as well.
Yes.
So to have a complex, integrated view of what medicine is, because it actually facilitates integration. So you need to have an integrated, sophisticated approach to resolving the perceived disharmony and conflict.
I love that. The integration and the perception of the conflict, but also, I think when I think of conflict, I think of, how that's one of the things that we all have to deal with every day. There's always going to be conflicts, and I'm wondering, one of the things that one of my beloved mentors who's crossed now, Angeles Arian, talked about how wherever there's an external conflict, there's an internal conflict always. And so the to seek out our own internal conflicts and resolve those, and to be able to find what medicine will help us to resolve things in that way. And I really think that we have a lot of work to do around these conflicts. And we had this recent experience of horror with Ahmaud Arbery, and I think that it's that systemic issue of the deep colonization and systemic racism, the conflict that has to be addressed in a different way. I mean, I know that, one of the things that you've spoken about is that your life is driven by a strong desire to see love and kindness in the world. To see that there is this capacity to resolve these conflicts and in ourselves. And I just wanted to open that in our conversation. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, I've had a lifetime of experimentation, and I wanted to get to the root of suffering. Like, why are we suffering? And for me, my core values center around loving kindness. And if we can become more loving in the sense of deeply connecting with others, being integrated with what it is that we have love for, and kindness, having care and concern for ourselves, being kind to ourselves and others. And I think a lot of the issues and problems that we see in the world is a lack of love,
Yeah.
and a lack of awareness of our interconnectivity, and a lack of desire to find harmony with each other and integration, because of a sickness of our mentality and the way we've constructed reality, our ideas about reality. And we can look at that in terms of sickness or illness. But I think that's something that's going to have to continuously be, resolved, because as we evolve, our ideas going to have to evolve, and our ideas must adapt to our current understandings of what it means to be a human being. And so, for me, love to be a fully loving person requires working through our shit.
Yeah.
Yes. And overcoming our conditioning and retraining ourselves, and educating ourselves on what it means to be a loving person. And as you bring up this incident about Ahmaud Arbery, and it brings up lots of issues in our society in general.
Yes.
What led these individuals to engage in this activity? Is it just those two individuals alone, or is it a historical, cultural, societal thing that we have to address? What is it in their mentality that was conducive for them to engage in such an action? And I think that's a very complex, a big picture that we all have to look at.
Yeah.
And what kind of judgments did these people have? And how to reflect on our own thing. What kind of judgments do we have about the world and about people?
Right.
And where did we get that judgment from? How have we been conditioned to see individuals and see the world in the way that we see them? And that requires a certain level of introspection.
Yes.
And a desire to want to see the world differently. And I can't impose it on anyone else. I can only do it on myself,
Right.
as best I can, and be an exemplar of that in the world. And so it requires a certain level of education, but you have to be willing to see things differently, to expand our worldview, to have a deeper understanding of the world and of the situation that we find ourselves in. And I think that's what's required in order for us to mitigate and reduce the chances of these types of events occurring. It requires there's no simple solutions, I don't think.
Yeah.
I think it's how do we look at this situation and be like, okay, then it's easy to demonize these gentlemen. It's easy to demonize the society and the culture. Okay, that's fine. We can do that, but what else are we going to do? I'm like, that doesn't do anything. Doesn't resolve anything.
Right.
Okay, we can ask for justice, and what does that mean, really? Okay, these folks go to jail. Is that going to solve the societal and cultural issues? And then, so what's the real medicine here?
Right.
And that medicine, I feel like, is centered around education and the cultivation of character, and a society that is interested in the cultivation of virtue, character, and it is interested in harmony and integration amongst its citizens. And so these are big questions. And I think being willing to explore those and not looking for quick fix solutions, and thinking about, what's the big picture here, and what things do we need to really do as a society to resolve these kinds of concerns.
Well, I think that your work is really critical in creating openings and thresholds, and the ways that you are. I feel that you're really directing and opening people, really asking people to kind of stand on their head and get another perspective, almost literally,
Yeah.
sometimes. And I think that, we do need another perspective. But I think that if we are willing to open to every conversation with our hearts open,
Mhm.
and with our spirits in touch, you know, and to know that so much is unknown. Like there's just so much that we don't know. And but one of the things I found is that um, I can always learn a lot more with someone else than I can by myself. I don't learn very much when I'm by myself, but if I'm with other people, I find that, there's just so much more that we can create together than we could possibly ever do by ourselves. And I think that that's a big part of the beauty that you bring, is that, you work so much with collectives and in addition to individuals. And so I'm wondering, I really love your curricula. Like the image of your curricula is so like the potencia, like very potent. And I think that it is, like you said, like there's no simple answers. I agree, there's no simple answers for anything in these realms. Like, everything is very complex and it takes time. But the thing that what I love is I love like the simplicity and the complexity, Broderick. You know what I mean? Like there's a simplicity and there's also such complexity in the midst of that. And in the middle, the question in the center of your curricula is, how do I make love my reality? And that is just like fucking mind blowing. I'm just like, oh my God, like, put my little unicorn icon up there with the, blown, mind, because it's, how can, how can I put my heart? It's one of the things I have my students do, Broderick, is in a couple of the first courses is I have them take their mind and literally move it to their heart and like learn to think with their heart. Like, and so this made me think a little bit at like how those two things kind of dovetail. But I was curious about, how can people make love their reality? What is your view on that at this time? And also we have our, this experience of sheltering in. And so I was curious about, how can people make love their reality?
Yeah, it's so funny you said simplicity and complexity. When we think of love, we think, that's a pretty simple thing. The experience in love is not that complicated.
Yeah.
But in order to make love our reality, that requires a certain level of complexity in the way we approach it. Like, and it can't be something very simple. And you mentioned something earlier about perspective and being in dialogue and conversation with others. And one of those things in that model is worldview, basically our perspectives. Being able to take multiple perspectives, being able to see the world through another person's eyes is a critical and important part about how to make love our reality in terms of how we act in the world. How do we interact with each other in the world? So one thing I say, I'm loving. Okay, how does that show up? And sometimes we have blind spots because we don't see everything. We always going to have blind spots.
Mhm.
But if my worldview and if my perspective on the world is restricted and limited, because it's just the nature of the thing, you know, it's 9 billion people on the planet, and that's 9 billion different perspectives.
Yeah.
That's just human.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to be able to have all 9 billion perspectives. But how do I maximize my perspectives? How do I, through understanding others, through having open-hearted conversations and dialogue, because that's going to open me up to, it's going to give me enough of complexity in the way that I construct reality because I have a different perspective. And so it can enhance my capacity to love, to form connection, to genuinely feel a connection with another being. That's just one piece of it, that part of that. And that's cognitive, you know, that's conceptual. What concepts, what ideas do I have about the world? And I think that sometimes, I mean, we can sometimes neglect that part of our spiritual growth and our growth in being loving, kind, and compassionate beings. Ideas filter how we relate to others, our ideas about them, our ideas about the world. And if we have a sophisticated view of the world that is well integrated, that can handle complexity, then I can love a person even though I may not agree with them. I can have love and compassion for them. Or I can have love and compassion for someone who's different. Or I can learn how to be mindful of, say for instance, I have a particular view of the world. And that particular view of the world is very restricted and narrow. And everybody outside of that narrow, restricted view of the world, they are wrong. And there's something wrong with them.
Right.
Because my worldview suggests that anything outside of that, my narrow perspective on reality, is not right. This is a simplistic way of looking at this.
Right.
But what happens? So all of those individuals that stand outside of my worldview, it's going to be difficult for me to love them. And so that's a major piece of the puzzle. And then there's all this other self-work about, you know, cultivating spiritual intelligence, cultivating emotional intelligence, being able to regulate my emotions so I'm not hijacked by my emotions and reactionary and harming people because I have no sense of self-control. I have self-awareness, you know, being able to sit still and reflect and being able to see how I see the world and how I react, how I respond to reality, just by being aware. I mean, I say just by being, it's not simple, of course, but
Complexity and
it's
simplicity.
simple, you know, you think it's a simple thing. You're like, what, you're just sitting here and you're being aware of yourself. I'm like, well, actually, the way our minds are constructed, that is hard. That is difficult. It's not easy. Having compassion for yourself and recognize like, oh, this is not easy, you know, and, you know, developing all these various capacities that we have, cultivating virtues. You got to work on that. You know, we don't come here with a blank slate, but we don't come here into this world knowing how to behave. You know, we've never been here before in this life, in this embodiment.
Right. Like what a gift.
I know it's a gift. So in this process, we have to, you know, understand our conditioning and develop characteristics that are conducive for being a loving person. I call it, these are the moral virtues. To be an ethical person is not a given, you know, because you can think about 200 years ago, what some people thought was virtuous and ethical and moral. We look at that now like, that's crazy.
That's a horrible.
Horrible, right? And so we have to learn and continuously willing to learn and to grow and develop ourselves as people. Not that something is wrong with us. That's not why you want to develop yourself. You want to develop yourself because something beautiful about us. It's like, how do I sculpt this beauty that is within me and express that beauty in the world through my love that requires effort and energy And not this like I'm a bad person. I mean, maybe, but for whatever reason. But at any rate,
There's
but when
options.
you're doing the best you can, and you're like, you know what? It's not that something is wrong with me. No, we're not saying that. It says like, how do I better reflect love in the world? And how do I put forth energy and effort into making that a reality? And the beautiful part of it is that, oh, if I learn to love myself and I free up all of those boundaries that's limiting my capacity to love myself, it's the win-win game. And if I can free myself from those unnecessary boundaries that create suffering in my life,
Unnecessary boundaries that create
and
suffering.
if I can free those up, healthy boundaries are important, but unnecessary boundaries that are not conducive for me to make connections, to love, to create harmony and resonance with that which I can potentially love, and a lot of it is just in my own self. It's if I don't love, if I'm not loving another, I'm just not able to love myself, because I don't recognize myself in others. And that requires some introspective work to come to that realization. Like the work that you're doing, all that healing work, helping folks heal their psyche and their spirit, their soul, is a part of the work of facilitating a person to be a more loving person, because they learning to love themselves and appreciate and value themselves for who they really are, beyond all of the coverings that is restricting our capacity to express that love in the world.
I'm really appreciating what you're saying about cultivating emotional and spiritual intelligence. And could you speak a little bit more to, I think people are a little bit aware of the heart in regards to emotional intelligence and the mind, but I don't know if they're quite as aware of how to develop a spiritual intelligence. And so I would be curious to enter that conversation a little bit in our time together. How do you see ways for people to do that?
Oh yeah. So spiritual intelligence, when I think of spiritual, and that's a whole discussion in itself, but let me try to think of this. Complexity and simplicity. Yeah. So when I think of spiritual, I think of something within ourselves, outside of ourselves, this pervasive quality of being that is beyond, I'll use myself, Broderick. Broderick is a set of ideas, a set of constructions that has happened over a lifetime of conditioning. And I have a tendency, my egoic process, my eye maker, part of my psyche says that, okay, I am Broderick, and these things what make Broderick Broderick. And it's related to a lot of the stuff that's in the world, my history and things of that nature. But spirituality and spirit transcends that. And so when I'm thinking about spiritual intelligence, how do I develop? When I think of intelligence, I mean processing of information of some sort.
Okay.
And so when I think about intelligence, I'm enhancing my capacity to have contact with my spirit.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
And so the more, quote unquote, the more spiritually intelligent I am, it's reflective of my capacity to make contact with spirit, this grand spirit that I have access to within my own being. And so the more, quote unquote, spiritually intelligent I am, it's reflected in my actions, because a lot of my actions come from spirit. It arises out of a deeply, profoundly spiritual place. And again, we have to use words, dualistic words, to make sense out of it. And for me, that's why I love the word love, because love directs you beyond your own self. it brings you into contact with something beyond your surface of your skin and your ideas about our ideas about ourselves. And if you think about the thing that you love, that space in between the thing that you love is spirit. It's indescribable, it's ineffable. And so how do I make contact with something that is so much greater than what I can possibly conceive in my mind? And so I take advantage of spiritual technologies. And nowadays we got access to spiritual technologies from all over the world. In our modern contemporary world, it's pretty amazing. And these spiritual technologies facilitate us to make contact with something greater than what we perceive ourselves to be. And the better we are at doing that, I think that's related to this idea of, again, quote unquote, spiritual intelligence. Is that we're more capable at making communication with spirit, with something that transcends this quality that transcends our ordinary conceptualizations of ourselves. I'm not even talking about subconscious. I'm talking even beyond subconscious.
It's consciousness.
It's like you could think of
get the
pure
consciousness to the heart. Take the consciousness to the heart. Take the consciousness to the spirit, to what is actually creating the movement, the life, the enchantment.
I have an awareness. I have a capacity to link my awareness to something beyond my ordinary awareness of the world and the tangible world and what I have experienced, even dreams, even beyond dreams. Dreams are an important part of it because it's a little bit more subtle than our gross physical experience. But beyond dream, how do I make contact with something beyond all of that? And to me, that's spirit. And to me, spirit is ineffable. We give it words, we give language, but all those words do is point to it. It points to something that's so vastly beautiful and amazing. And we strive to continuously make contact with that. And when I say make contact, so not just having a spiritual experience, I think, now I'm going to say this and might get me in trouble, but a lot of people focus a lot on awakening. After awakening, I had a profound spiritual experience. I'm like, that's cool. Now what you going to do?
Yes, exactly, Broderick,
exactly. And so that intelligence, how do I process? So it's not just making a contact, because that's what I call them, spiritual experience junkies.
Right. What's going on to the next without having actually implemented?
So that integration is that's what intelligence shows in how we act. And so if I have a spiritual experience, I have a profound state experience. How do I translate that state experience into traits? The traits of character, against all that character stuff comes into play. How does that reflect in how I act and behave in the world? How does that reflect in my values? And so if I have deeply profound spiritual experience, now I'm like, cool, good job. Now the work.
Yes.
The work is now working through all of that stuff that limits us from fully expressing that spiritual experience in the world as traits, as character. And that's the intelligence, because I have the capacity to process that spiritual experience and bring that spiritual experience into my actions and my behaviors in the world. So that's what I mean by, in a convoluted way, that's what I mean by spiritual intelligence.
Fantastic.
I spontaneously think about that.
I love that. I love it. And I think that one of the things when I think about this, one of the things that's so powerful when I think about character is that, we have to be accountable to our awakenings.
Yes.
Yes,
beautiful.
Right? There's all these ancestors, there's all these spirits, there's all these
you know, my mom taught me, both of my mothers taught me that there's all these spirits, all these ancestors are counting on you, and they're waiting for you to be the one to do the right thing, to break the ancestral patterns that are no longer working, to bring forward the ancestral patterns that are good, true, and lasting. And Tonkashala wants to help us do that. Creator, Great Spirit, Cielo, the sky, you know, wants to help us, but we have to, you know, develop, you know, for me, I see it where people really develop that spiritual intelligence is when they're willing to engage with the invisible, you know, when they're willing to have intimacy with the invisible and
Yes.
to engage with that from a place of faith and trust, you know, and if not faith, then trust, you know. So that reminds me of the stillness that you were talking about. And we had this poem, Broderick, about the solace and about sanctuary. I mean, I was thinking about sanctuary and solace when I found the poem. And then there's also this one that I have by Grant Redhawk, Two Feathers, that I really love. And our conversation is reminding me of this prayer, which is, you know, Creator, hear us. You know, Creator, hear us. Tonkashala, we thank you for all that you've given us. We thank you for the lessons that you've taught us and for the life that you've allowed us to lead. We thank you, Unchimaka, for your beauty and sustenance. We thank the masters of this universe for their guidance, protection, and direction. I love that. Guidance, protection, and direction. Tonkashala, we thank you for the white light that surrounds us and for that same white light which transmutes all negativity into love and healing. So I'm reading this, but I'm changing the word father to Tonkashala, which is my mom taught me that Tonkashala means father, and my brother Mel, and, you know, we call father Tonkashala, and then Mother Earth is Unchimaka, or grandmother Earth. So I'm just changing those words to honor that and to honor her. But we thank you, Tonkashala, for the healing of our souls, the healing of the earth, and for the healing of all humankind. I love that. We call upon the power of the universe to allow us happiness, prosperity, healing, and love. And we call upon the power of the universe for good relationship to all people, places, and things. I'm adding people and places and things. We call upon the power of the universe for sacred direction, sacred protection, sacred correction, and sacred connection. We call upon the power of the universe for magic and miracles. We honor you, Tonkashala, as we honor all things seen and unseen. We honor you, Creator, as we honor our ancestors, as we honor ourselves. Great mystery. We honor you, great mystery, as we honor our ancestors, as we honor ourselves. And so this is by Grant Redhawk, Two Feathers. And then it's Aho, it is good. Aho, it is good. But I was thinking about what you were talking about, Broderick, with what he says about the sacred direction, sacred protection, sacred correction, and sacred connection, right? So I'm thinking about that, and I'm wondering about, you know, is there a practice that you think people might be able to do in order to connect with this ability to do either a sacred direction, find a sacred direction, or find a sacred protection, or a sacred correct. I love correction because I find myself, I try to correct myself throughout the day. I'm not always successful. But I really do try to do that. But I'm a lot more successful at the sacred connection. But do you have any wisdom about, you know, how people may be able to make that connection and to make those corrections?
Wow.
At this time.
I mean, I think it starts with, as I think about this on the spot, I think it starts with being still and being and coming to that place of stillness, of silence, of awareness, because in that space there's an openness to sensitivity. You're a little bit more sensitive, and from that place of sensitivity, you can, in openness and spaciousness, you can guide your direction. I think when we come into stillness, we come into sanctity. I think the sacred arises out of that stillness, out of the silence, because it's ineffable again, the silence. And if we can practice come into that space, now there's only one part of it, of course, but a practice of coming into the silence and the stillness in our own being. And maybe we can tap into something that gives us that direction. Or we can think of, you can use the word spirit. How do we allow ourselves to be open to spirit giving us that direction? And being able to go into that place of stillness and quietness as best we can. And again, a type of mindfulness practice that can be very conducive to that. Particularly, you know, something simple is following your breath, sitting still, and you can close your eyes or not, sitting still and tuning into the natural breathing process, making intimate connection with your own breathing, and being open, not trying to fix it, not trying to judge it, but seeking you find connection with the natural breathing process. And maybe as we do that, just sitting still and observing the breath and see what happens as we do that. And that can bring us to a stillness and intimacy with ourselves where we can listen and hear the direction. Or what was the other direction? And what was the other thing you said? Connection for sure when you come into stillness, but the correction.
Yeah, correction.
How do I correct? Let me just be still for a moment.
Mm.
Let me exhale slowly, mindfully, and just be still before I react to anything, before I do anything. Let me just sit in the stillness. And now from this stillness, let me act from that space. So I think a practice, as one goes throughout the day, let me just sit still and attend to my breath. Maybe you count to breath. Maybe you count to 10. And focus on it. Say for instance, on the exhale, just count 1 on the exhale, 2 on the next exhale. Just count to 10. And then let go of the count and see, can you be still with your breath? And maybe even beyond that, to me, beyond the counting, not beyond it, but another way, the counting is a little easier because it's just a number. For some folks, it's really hard to just sit still with your own breathing.
All right.
But to be able to be, as you're breathing in, like the meditation we've done.
Yes.
I am aware of breathing in. I'm aware of breathing out. Saying that I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. Saying that to yourself as you're breathing in, as you're breathing out. And then slowly let go of those phrases to just sit still. It's not about getting it. And so I'm going to say this, it's not about getting it perfect. It's not about getting it right. It's about putting forth the effort, because if we're trying to get it right, it's not going to happen. But if we just playfully exploring,
that's so great,
making intimate contact with our own breathing, and prayerfully we make contact with stillness and silence, and from that space, the sacred reveals itself.
Oh, Broderick. So beautiful. Thank you so much. And so I would say maybe a good practice would be to ask people to follow their breath. And I appreciated so much in the leadership training where you came and did some beautiful mindfulness teaching. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And people just were so moved. Broderick, people are still raving. It's just about
Mhm.
that mindfulness. Thank you so much for what you gave them. And um, the following of the breath, and then something I really liked that you were sharing in the course was about breathing in and then breathing out love, and then breathing in, and then it ended up just simply, in my mind, I remember going through the mindfulness practice, and eventually it was simply love. Like it just ended up being breathe in love, breathe out love, and then all there was just this ever expanding heart of this beautiful web of life. And
Mhm.
so beautiful. So I think perhaps the following of the breath. But then I would also say, uh, what you spoke to with the connection and the protection and the correction, that's something that we can all be thinking about, and to go into those still places and to enter the silence. And for me, I always come in a humble manner, in a way where I hope that I'm giving something to the spirit world when I come there. So that is my hope. And I'd love to finish with this prayer, which has the word solace in it, which is one of the reasons. Broderick, you were so awesome. I love working with you. You were just like a blossom for my heart. You just thank you so much for you. I'm really grateful.
Thank you, Char. I'm grateful for you. You're awesome. You're really awesome.
Oh, thank you. We have a mutual admiration. Awesome party.
Awesome. There we go. That's love, right?
Oh, it's so great. It's so great. And so remember, this poem is by Sama Himmel, Sophie Johnson. And pardon my pronunciations, they're not always perfect on names, but I love this poem, and it's called Intertwine Heaven. Remember your own solace, place deep in your eyes, pure illumined silence. Remember to recognize your peace of mind, the source of light, even through the deep tunnels sometimes crossing our lives. The soul only embraces events received out of emanations of universe, no matter if it is clear to you, regardless of whether your thoughts about the world speak truth or confusion to you in your mind and memories. Fighting your tears and grief, thinking you have hurt yourself, fearing you cannot forgive, afraid life is not trustworthy, I say to you, you are like the most beautiful and gentle clay, forming and shaping as the breakers brush against the cliff, always moving, changing like a river that never ceases. You are one with the ocean's altering horizons, where night meets day and seasons shift between our souls. Don't be afraid of what you do not understand and cannot yet grasp. If you are lost in the dark night of the soul, nothing has ever happened that was not meant. Even your thoughts tell you this is not so. We share the same intertwined heaven. We are carried and held in the same light. We are loved in the same light. Light will not elude you. Let every breath fill your mind with peace. Let your soul unfold courageously into divine wisdom and open itself for the beautiful things that want to enter your life from the future. The greatest truth of love, and the only thing that matters, is that you are alive. The greatest truth of love, and the only thing that matters, is that you are alive. Intertwined Heaven, Sama Himmel, Sophie Johnson. By Sophie Johnson from Sama Himmel, Intertwined Heaven.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank
Broderick.
you.
And I look forward to our next conversation and hopefully in person sometime very
Yes,
soon.
hopefully, I know.
Just say, oh, that's going to be a really good hug.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
Hearts are going to radiate out into the universe. And so I thank you and thank everyone for watching. And Broderick, thank you for this holy privilege and for the wisdom that moves through you with such grace. And I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love you, Char.
I love you, Broderick. Thank you. I'm so grateful.